Hello, Global Theater. My name is Gerry Fialka. Today's May 7, 2025. Want to thank Rob Grant and this amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. Please subscribe. Also want to thank Andre, Renee, and James Joyce for introducing me to today's guest, Raphael Slepon. It is part two. Part one was November 6, 2024. One of the best ever. I really appreciate your time and energy and everything you do with Fleet. Amazing. So, Rafi, we talked at the end of part one about archiving, and it was very interesting. You went into a lot of aspects of your knowledge in the tech world and how you back up Fleet. And we even went into archive.org, whether you'd put it on archive.org. My first question in that regard is, you've done the physical kind of backup, but the real thing is, if you die, is there someone that's able to kind of take over all the things you do? Because it's pretty much your baby. It isn't like you've got a board of directors helping you.
No, not at all. It's a good question. The simple answer is unfortunately no.
Yeah.
I've thought about it, and I've occasionally hinted at it to people that I thought might fill the role or might be interested, but nobody is bitten yet.
Yeah.
So there's two aspects to it. The database of Fleet, basically the collection of all the notes, is easily accessible, and anyone can download it at any point. So, and I give instruction on how people can download everything. So, from the point of view of the notes, so if someone wants it, you can take it in a matter of seconds.
Wow.
But on the search engine, the programming behind it, that is not readily available. And I think it would be very complex for anyone to continue this work without my initial tutoring, because it's complex. It's been written over,
Yeah.
I don't know, 20 years,
Yeah.
and so that part, were I to die tomorrow, will probably be lost.
And that is that able to be put in an instruction manual? How much tutoring would it take approximately? 5 hours, 20 hours, 100 hours? I mean,
100 hours.
oh no, 100 hours.
It's complex. It's very
Okay.
complex. So I'm kind of, what I'm thinking at the moment is, I'm trying to sort of find someone who'd be willing to
Yeah.
learn, and I've given instruction how to download the notes, and I'm looking into ways that if I die, someone will be able at least to continue to pay Amazon. Amazon is where my website is located, so it can continue to function,
Yeah.
even if it cannot be added to or improved and nobody's maintaining it, it's still available. It's something that I think is a question that affects many websites.
Yeah.
The question is, how, even if there's no need for maintenance, there's the need to continue to pay someone to keep it alive. And I kind of think that a global solution is needed for that. Something like, okay, I'll pay you
Yeah.
$2,000 for a lifetime
Yeah.
or something
Really
like that.
good. Is that called, what is that called? You pay the, because I know my laughtears.com, the guy says, oh, I pay five. He helps me with it. He pays $5 a year or something. What is that called? They're paying the server, they're paying the carrier. What's that word called?
Oh, okay. So there's two elements to it. One part of it is paying for the, it depends. It's either called paying for the hosting or paying for the server. It depends on,
Yeah,
on how you, most people have what's called, web, independent websites have what's called web hosting.
yeah,
Basically, you share it with a lot of other people.
yeah,
Since Fleet is a search engine and can be at times heavy and needs some resources, I have something a bit more evolved called a virtual server.
yeah,
It basically gives me my own virtual server with
yeah,
my own CPU, my own hard disk, my own, it's just not at
yeah,
home, it's somewhere in Virginia.
yeah,
So I have to pay, I pay Amazon. I pay Amazon something like $7 a month
yeah,
for the server.
yeah.
Additionally, I need to pay someone for the URL for the name of fleet.org. That's, I also pay Amazon, and that costs about, I think, something like $14 a year.
14 a
So,
year. Yeah. So
yeah,
the two are the host virtual server and the URL name. Yeah.
yes, that's the
Okay. Now,
two things.
this is really good. And this is too much housekeeping tech to waste your amazing brain cells on, but you're such an expert on it, and that's why Fleet is so good. It isn't just a cheesy, lit guy who says, I'll put up a bunch of information. You knew how to do it. I mean, you are the ultimate form content Wakian godhead. So here is the second question, Keith suggested that I asked you as well is web. I think you sort of already answered this, but crawlers can grab your information and put it to answer questions or repost it. And he said you can either give permission to web crawlers or not get or restrict them. Is that what you do? Do you have a little thing you've notched and say this is open or it's restricted?
Yeah. So yes, it's an important question that again I wish there was a universal answer to, but there isn't. So everybody has to solve it on its own. There's two parts to it. Well, basically, yes, you there's the crawlers. You give them permission or deny permission, and you can do it on a page by page level. I
Oh,
give crawlers permission to enter a fleet to what's called the static pages, the home page, the bibliography, things like that. I deny permission to enter the the search results. Basically, when you enter Fleet, you can run searches and you get
I
search
see.
results. The problem with that is that Fleet is so evolved that every search result uh, can give access to hundreds of additional search results. And basically, this web of search results is literally infinite.
Yeah.
So, since web crawlers are stupid, they don't know what they're doing. They enter this web and they'll never stop. They'll jump from page to page to page to page, and the problem with that is that web crawlers are infinitely faster than humans. Human will perform a search every few seconds at best. A web crawler can easily do 100 searches a second. and it can crash the website. That's why I'm denying that portion.
Why? Well, that's Rafi. That seems like my formula might apply. James Joyce invented web crawling and disguised it as a book. Would you agree with that one or disagree?
Disagree.
Good. Give me a high five. So let's dive into it. This is,
Just one more
oh,
thing. Okay,
please
just
go ahead.
one. There's one thing that needs to be 10 years ago, everything that I've told you has been correct, more or less. But things have changed in the last couple of years. I attribute it to the race to AI and the AI crawlers that want to learn everything. More and more crawlers nowadays ignore my permission or denial of permission. They there's no it's a voluntary system, so they just ignore it. The good ones, like say Google, they abide by it, but a lot of rogue, what I call rogue crawlers, uh, I definitely count among them ChatGPT, because I've identified ChatGPT as someone as a crawler that ignores my request. But there's a lot of other ones that just ignore my request, and I need to find tech solutions to block them actively.
So let me clarify the word ignore. You mean they bypass. You say no and they cut in and get it illegally, and then what are you going to do? Pay lawyers to get them? That's like you're going to make lawyers money then.
No, it's even worse, because there's no way for me to identify who it is.
You can't even identify the criminal.
No, because there's the middle one, like ChatGPT identified himself, but ignores my request. But there are worse ones that actively go out of their way to hide their identity.
Oh my
So
God.
you don't know who they are. They might be someone in you can usually know which even that's the problem nowadays. But they might be in, I don't know, Bulgaria,
Yeah.
China, wherever, and
Yeah.
there's nothing to stop them except trying manually to stop that IP address or that IP
Yeah.
address.
Beautiful. So, Rafi, we got into a lot in part one. And one thing I love to ask you about is, the new biography on Richard Ellman just came out. I don't know if you read the review in the Wall Street Journal. It just, it talks about the main guy who wrote the ultimate author biography now has a biography on him. And
I'll look into it.
yeah, and we all turn to Ellman as a pretty good source. And he said this quote somewhat, "We are all learning to be Joyce's contemporaries." Now, I would like you to psychoanalyze that statement. And basically, is it him saying Joyce, Zappa both said all times are happening now, all at onceness? And that so Joyce isn't defining time. It's dig infinity. It's all times are happening now. Or is he saying, oh, we can go put Dublin back together by studying Finnegan's Wake. So we're Joyce's actual contemporaries. We can live in Joyce's time. Is it one or the other of that interpretation or something different for you?
I would go with something different. It kind of my view results from my work on Finnegan's Wake and on Fleet. It, I think, especially in Finnegan's Wake, but also in Ulysses, there's a lot. Joyce, as he worked, he collected information from newspapers, from books that were very relevant. They were very contemporary in that sense. They were news of the day that nowadays, for the most part, are forgotten. And in order to understand some of his some of his references, we need to be able to travel back in time mentally and to understand his point of view about things that nowadays are forgotten. I'll give examples perhaps from today. I think that if someone were to write a novel today and mention Pete Hegseth, okay,
Yeah.
we'll know who that is. But 100 years from now, I don't think anybody would remember him. But today it's very relevant, and everybody in the US would understand that. There's
Yeah.
a lot of that in, in Joyce. Joyce reveled in the contemporary, in the minute. The older he became, less he read books and more he read newspapers. And especially he read less and less fiction. If he read anything, he read non-fictions and newspapers. So, and newspapers are really kind of fleeting information. Uh, 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 Small events like, I don't know, a trial that happened sometime in 1926 can enter Finnegan's Wake and be referred to, and it's essentially forgotten. So in that sense, we need to understand what Joyce had in his mind at the time of his writing, and a lot of it was events that are specific to the 1920s and 1930s. And
Yeah.
also to his, perhaps its youth and childhood, which is also information that has been lost.
Yeah. Because, one of his, whatever you want to call him, Wyndham Lewis played a part in
Mhm.
being a peer to Joyce, where
Mhm.
he puts him in the book and he plays a big part in it.
Right.
Wyndham Lewis said something interesting in regards to how I was saying we could interpret Ellman's uh, quote. Artists live in the present and write a detailed history of the future. Now that sounds so bullshitty in New Age, but in a lot of ways, that's what Joyce did. I think he lived in the moment. He lived in Paris in the 20s and listened to shortwave radio and wrote it all down. And in essence, he was, writing a detailed history of the future. So that transcends time. That's all times are happening now. So you brought up how we know the kind of standard where who Joyce was majorly influenced by. Vico, Dante, Shakespeare, the list goes on. And you sort of hinted at Lewis Carroll that you would like to touch on him. I wanted to throw out a Lewis Carroll quote in one of my questions, and then you can go into how Lewis, in your opinion, had an impact on Joyce. Lewis says, I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Have you believed in any impossible things lately?
Oh, yeah. I'm not sure. I can't really think at the moment of any example of. Yeah, actually, at the moment on Fleet, I'm about 3 or 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, actually, I started what I called reviewing Fleet, basically going note by note, thinking about it and improving, deleting, adding, things like that. And at the current rate, it'll probably take me an additional 40 to 50 years to complete.
Wait, how
So
old are you? How old are you right now?
I'm 59.
59. So 40 years, you'd be 100 years old. That's possible.
Yeah,
That's possible.
um, I'll debate that. Well,
Well, what,
it's
how long did your parents live? Are they still living?
they're still living, but they're young. They're still in their 70, late
Oh, they're
70s.
in their 70s. Yeah.
Yeah,
'Cause
so they're.
I'll tell you my favorite line because,
Uh-huh.
I get various answers on that question. But Sun Ra, the great jazz shaman, said, "The
Uh-huh.
impossible attracts me because everything possible has been done and the world didn't change." So I like you put it into context. Now, why do you think Lewis was, or is he are you saying more he's ignored as a major influence on the Wake, or what were you wanting to say about Lewis in the Wake?
No, I'm not. I don't remember what exactly I said back then, but I probably was referring more as Lewis as an influence on my writing rather than the Wake.
Oh, you mean,
Definitely.
yeah, and to clarify, not Wyndham Lewis, you mean Lewis Carroll
Yeah, yeah. Sorry.
on your own writing.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Lewis Carroll on my own writing. Obviously, he had. He does appear in the Wake, but I think he appears in the Wake more, or in addition to being the author of the Alice novels, he appears more as a character that has um, some similarities to HC. For example, the stutter. For example, the interest in young girls. So he is, in some respect, Lewis Carroll is one of the models for HCE. And additionally, I think the fact that he wrote the Alice novels uh, that have glancing similarities to Finnegan's Wake is also, I think, was of interest. But I think he was more interested in the man than in his writing.
Great. So your first novel is
Mhm.
pronounced oval.
And it's pronounced a novel.
Oh, I thought it was spelled Ovel.
It is spelled O-A-N space O-V-E-L. An oval.
I got you. It's
Yeah, but
pronounced a
a
novel. Very
novel.
good.
Yeah,
That was published, self-published in 2013.
that's true.
Now, when you say my own writing, have you been writing fiction since then?
I've been toying. I've been collecting information. I'm the kind of writer that needs to allocate a big portion of my time to do that. And at the moment, I'm more invested in working on Finnegan's Wake and less in writing. So I'm kind of, I have a notebook, I keep
Right.
notes, ideas, but I haven't actually written substantially since.
So you're saying that Lewis Carroll affected your writing of a novel?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Now, is Lewis Carroll considered poet as well as a novelist? Isn't he? Is he?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. He definitely he, he wrote poetry. I think his most famous poet is "The Hunting of the Snark."
Yeah. Okay. Good.
That's, I think, the
So
most
let's
famous.
go into poetry. What's the function of poetry?
Uh, I think it has more than one function, but the one that attracts me most is uh, the pushing the boundary of language and finding new ways uh, of expressing uh, ideas through language. I think, in that respect, Finnegan's Wake is more similar to poetry than it is to a standard novel. It just poetry in a novel form over 600 pages. There aren't that many 600 pages poems out there.
Right. Let me throw out a couple. Gary Snyder beat poet, nature poet. My task as a poet entails the work of seeing the world without language and then putting that seeing into language.
That's I think, a good description of poetry. I'm not familiar with his poetry, but I find myself more attracted to poetry that pushes the boundaries of language while doing that.
Yeah. Just another cute one is Kenneth Rexroth. The purpose of poetry is to woo your lover and subvert the bourgeois.
That's less my take on things.
And then T.S. Eliot said, poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
It's a combination of languages. It depends on the context. It's a combination of, in my case, of Hebrew, English, and French, and occasionally a bit of Yiddish, because that's the languages I grew up with.
But that's literally, metaphorically, what form is your inner consciousness in?
It's fairly verbal, actually.
Verbal, yes, okay.
Yeah, I kind of talk to myself. As a child, I've been known to occasionally forget that I'm talking to myself and doing it out loud. So I've outgrown it, but at times I would forget and just talk out loud to myself.
Yeah. A couple more, just curious. Muriel Ruckensire said, art creates meeting places. Poetry creates democracy.
I'm not sure I can relate to that.
Yeah. This is Leo Bersani's study of Mallarmé, the symbolist.
Yes.
The very crises which threatens the writing of poetry sustains poetic composition.
Yeah, that's basically I think the starving artist, the one that the image of the starving artist or starving poet who forges through his pain into language and into poetry. That's one aspect of poetry. I respect poets who don't suffer just as well.
Right. And there's another one, two of my film heroes go, ignore yourself. There is no self-expression. The jazz pianist Cecil Taylor says, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me. Is art making, poetry, writing, more self-expression, or more it's a vehicle for whatever technologies, cultures, and environments are dominant?
It depends on the writer. There are those that seek to express themselves, and there are those who don't. It's very variable, and I think it runs the entire spectrum.
But let's say for you, which one resonates more with you, in your opinion, of which one resonates more for Joyce?
I think uh, in both cases, I think self-expression is not an important part.
Not
No,
N-O-T. Yeah.
not an important part. Uh, I think uh, Joyce is too too much in control of what is writing to just allow self-expression to creep in. Occasionally he does, but I think he's more interested in artifice, in the creation of a huge monument, if you will, and less in expressing himself. I think it's different, the younger Joyce and the older Joyce. When I'm talking about the older Joyce, the
Yeah.
late Ulysses and Finnegan's Wake, I think a portrait is interested in self-expression. That's why it's so autobiographical. I think he moved from that to something more mature in
Yeah.
Finnegan's Wake.
Yeah. Really good. This is Milan Kundera. This is why I love it in Unbearable Likeness of Being. This is why I love writing, because the character I'm writing about can go further than I can. Yeah, right. That sounds romantic. I'm going to put a character down on a piece of paper. How can it go further?
Yeah. I think there is. I think in some respect, it's not only that allows something to the writer that he himself might not be able to do. I think there is a large group of readers that enjoy fiction and literature just because it allows them the flight of fancy or the event that they cannot achieve in real life. So it's
They can
understandable.
take it. But you're saying that that's the interaction between the reader and the creator, because the reader, we know the reader can take it further. But how can he's saying the character that I'm writing about can go further? I guess he's implying that the reader can take it further.
Not only, but the character can do things or think things or say things that he might not be able to do in real life.
Yeah.
In that respect, it's further. It gives a freedom that he cannot have in real life.
Really good, Raph.
Respect.
Really good talking to you, Raphael. I appreciate it. This was a follow-up. I missed this question after the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Can art making be egoless?
Egoless?
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. Depends very much on what art is, but I mean, there's art that has been good art, even that's been created as pot boilers and just for in order to make ends meet and in order to appeal to the reader and less interested in the ego of the writer or the artist in that case. So I think as the more the creator is in control of his medium, he's able to do things that are not necessarily coming from his ego. It's in some respects similar to the previous question about self-expression. If you can write something that's not self-expressed, then it's egoless.
Yeah. Well, that's two people. Steve Martin loves to quote Mamet. Art is a product of the unconscious mind. It's like, yeah, right. That's romantic again, right? Well,
Yeah.
yeah, we're conscious, but that's like Dante prayed to the muse to aid him. So they
Mhm.
want to feel like, oh, I'm just having this stuff come through me.
Mhm.
Maria Callas said a great one. She goes, in order to be a performer, you have to have half your brain in control and half of it out of control.
Mhm.
So that's an interesting thing. So how do you let this stuff shoot through you when you're going to have your biases set up?
I think, as someone, when I look back on my creative process, for example, when I wrote things, especially a novel, uh, there were points where I knew what I was doing. I had a plan of what I was going to write and how I was going to write it. And then at some point, I noticed that as I wrote it according to my plan, there, upon rereading, I noticed things that were there that not necessarily I had intended to. It's
Yeah.
like a lucky coincidence, a
Yeah.
fortuitous, a serendipitous. And of course, in that respect, and there's a lot of serendipity in all our lives and in writing as well. And that part of it is very enjoyable when you come
Yeah.
across it. I'm not sure. I think it happens regardless of whether you have a half a brain out of control. It happens regardless because we're very good at noticing coincidences and exploiting coincidences.
Okay. What's the opposite of a coincidence? What's the word? Coincidence and its opposite. What would you say?
Destiny.
Good. What's
Mm,
the opposite of serendipity?
um, what's it called? I forgot the word. Determinism.
Determinism, really good. No, that was good. You forgot the word. That is serendipitous. The brainiac of all Wakians forgets a word. But
Oh, you don't know the half of it. My memories. I'm losing my memory
I know
day by day. Yeah.
we all are. But we because we take Joyce literally. Remember to forget. It's like, no, I didn't mean it literally.
Yeah.
Okay, but we're going to get into literal and metaphor in a second. But um, Joyce said, I didn't write Finnegan's Wake. Those people over at the cafe wrote it, which is sort of like, hey, I'm just listening to shortwave radio in Paris and writing it down. It's similar to that. I'm just like this vehicle. And so this is poet critic Helen Vendler. She just died. I write to explain things to myself. Your take on that and what Joyce would say on that.
Okay. Let's start with. You see, one of the problems with all these quotes is that I can't comment on anybody except but I can comment on Joyce. And the
Yeah.
fact that, and I'll comment in a moment
Yeah.
on what Joyce said, but the fact that I can comment on Joyce seems to imply that perhaps if I knew about all the other people as much as I know about Joyce, I might see through what they say. I
Yeah.
think Joyce was a lot of what he said in public is a combination of wishful thinking and malicious exaggeration.
Yeah.
Uh, he knew that what he said might well be taken seriously, and I think he enjoyed in fooling
Yeah.
his readership into thinking things other. I think he was very much in some respect very much in control of what he's doing. In other respects, very much out of control due to the what he was trying to do and losing his way along the way,
Yeah.
especially in Finnegan's Wake. So I don't trust Joyce. When I hear that he said something, I immediately think, okay, the fact that he said it doesn't necessarily mean that he thought it, that he believed it. He like everybody else, he's allowed to lie.
Wait,
So
but let's stay on that for a second. Do you trust Finnegan's Wake? You don't trust Joyce talking about his motives and his PR line. I mean,
yes,
PR is a professional lying. That's what it
mhm,
is. But
I
it's
agree.
hype. It's hype. In fact, the line I love to say is exaggeration is a million times more effective than understatement.
I had a friend in high school who said that if you don't exaggerate, you don't have anything to say.
You don't have anything to say.
Yeah,
But now back to you. You don't trust what he said. You understand what he's doing. Wishful
yes.
thinking, malicious exaggeration. But do you trust Finnegan's Wake?
I'm not
Is
sure
that
trust.
is that wishful thinking and malicious exaggeration as well?
I'm not sure trust is the right verb to it.
Yeah,
Finnegan's Wake is what it is, and I'm
yeah,
trying to interact with it.
right.
I do know that he has uh, tricks and attempts to fool the reader, but that's legitimate. That's the legitimate part of the art. It's not the same. It's not PR for PR's sake. It's art for art's sake, and fooling the reader is a legitimate. It's been done by a lot of a lot simpler authors that try to trick I mean, mystery whodunit are often trying to trick the reader along the way so they can have a reveal at the end. Uh, Joyce does it as well at some point in Finnegan's Wake, but uh, it's not that I don't. So there's nothing to trust it. It's just an
It just is.
artifact.
But there's something that attracted you to spend your life on it. So you like it. You don't, yeah, you're saying, okay, but do you think Finnegan's Wake is true?
No, I think Finnegan's Wake. I don't think of art as true or false. It's. I mean, is the Sistine Chapel the ceiling of the Sistine true or false? It's not. It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. So is
Yeah.
Finnegan's Wake beautiful?
Sometimes, not always, but sometimes it is.
I can't,
When
I
it's good,
can't,
it's very good.
yeah, I can't get you to commit, Raphael. You spend your life on this book and you won't tell me why. Yeah. But anyways, you've told me
Yes,
in many ways.
yes.
And so this is, I write to explain things to myself. Don't you think Joyce was doing that a little with the Wake?
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
I think there was it's so complex so that there is an element of self-exploration
yeah,
done within it. But I don't think that's the major reason
yeah.
for its existence.
And then here's Bertolt Brecht asked Charles Lawton, the great actor, why do you act? And he said, because people don't know what they are like, and I think I can show them. I mean, to me, that is Joyce. I think I could show them, and he proved himself with all his writing. Like, you're good at saying, here's early Joyce, here's late Joyce, but you are, of all Joyce, your focus is the wake. It's not Ulysses. Yeah. So
Yes.
this is how does one acquire taste, in setting it up. Igor Stravinsky. Most people don't know what they like what they know. So most people, if you're at a cocktail party and you go, have you read Joyce? And the guy goes, yeah, I read Ulysses. It's great. But Finnegan's Wake, he went a little too far, and they discount it. You're fucking nuts to study the Wake. You can't. In fact, I asked Ray Bradbury twice, because he wrote Fahrenheit right down the street here in Venice, California.
Oh, really?
And I said, have you ever read Finnegan's Wake? And he says, yeah, I got it on my shelf. What do I do now? And I goes, contemplate it. And then at the end of his life, they were at, public bookstore, events, and they would do this horrible thing where you write your question on a card, and then the host asked the question instead of the person. I hate that.
Yeah.
And they said, have you ever read I wrote it and he read it. Have you ever read Finnegan's Wake out loud with a group of people? And Ray goes, nobody's ever read Finnegan's Wake. He didn't answer the question. It was, have you ever read it out loud? Because smart people, when you go, have you ever read Finnegan's Wake out loud with a group of people? They go, sounds like the way you should do it. They literally, because they don't know of that. So this is another thing we kind of weaseled into. McLuhan says that all words are metaphorical. Then what is the word literal a metaphor for?
That's a bit convoluted. I don't have an answer to that, but it kind of reminds me of, I think it was Berkeley, and there's I don't remember the anecdote well enough, but Berkeley, the Irish philosopher, was an extreme in his opposition to materialism, where he said that everything was a product of God, of the mind, and nothing existed as a material object. Basically, it's the philosophical parallel of what you said. Nothing. And then I think it was, don't remember who it is, that kicked a stone and said, here, I'm kicking a stone. The stone exists.
Yeah, the stone exists.
Yeah. So in that respect, literal is the metaphor for that stone, for the real stone.
For a real stone, yeah. In fact, one brilliant literature person said literal is a metaphor for the letter. So the symbol is it. That's if you spell the word L-I-T, literal. Okay, now another really good, Rafi. I love talking to you. We should do an 8-part Netflix series. So another guy who was a good writer I interviewed, he told me someone told him the difference between storytelling and narrative. Well, no, the question is, what is the difference between storytelling and narrative? He said, someone told him, narrative doesn't lie. Now, your take on what's the difference between the two and that, does narrative not lie?
Okay, I think there's again, I don't remember who said that, but there's the definition the don't remember who said that at the moment, but there's the division. The king, the king died and the queen died is a story.
Yeah.
The king died and the queen died of grief is a narrative or a plot.
Oh, that's the story is they both die. The queen dies of grief
Grief, yeah.
is a narrative.
Yeah, I'm trying to think who said it's some 20th century
Yeah, but it
English
doesn't
writer.
matter. The
Yeah.
beauty is love thy label as thyself. Rafi, if you know what you're telling me, you don't have to have the credit. I know we like to credit, but in essence, it's more important that you're translating an idea to me. You're articulate and concise. So now, what's your take on that? That narrative doesn't lie. Not
I think
true? Or, yeah.
everything lies.
Yeah, everything.
Everyone lies.
Good. We'll go into the lying. We'll go into the lying page. Their truth.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Louis Buñuel says, "I'm for anyone who seeks the truth, but I part ways when they claim they found it." Now, most people go, "That's great," and one guy goes, "No, that's bullshit." Because if I'm going to seek something, it's because I want to find it. So I morphed it into the question: if the journey is more important than the destination, why do we have to name or seek a destination?
I think without a destination, it's not necessarily a journey. It's just uh, aimless wandering, which might be fine. But I think, I think, I, th- I think, in that both the journey, or if I translate it to creation, I think if we look at Joyce or myself, or I think a lot of other writers, the fact that you have scaffolding to build, to create on, is very important, even if the scaffolding is artificial. And I think the fact that you have a destination, even if that destination is imaginary, or you don't know that, you know that you'll never get there, the fact that it's there helps you progress in the journey.
Yeah, because, but most people say that you need the focus, destiny. That was good, but you're saying even if it's not there, because the flaneurs were there in Paris when Joyce was there. Psychogeography, Walter Benjamin, they were like, let's just sit at the coffee house and drink coffee and chill out. We don't have to do anything. But Joyce had the epiphany in everydayness. So I'm just drinking my coffee and then I have my epiphany. So, I mean, that indeed is kind of a contrary to this thing about having, the destination, or like just Buñuel saying, "I'm for anyone who seeks the truth." I mean, don't we all seek the truth normally? Because the Proust question is, and you said everything lies. That's a beautiful statement, because Proust, the question I'm going to ask you is, on what occasion do you lie? But here's the setup, Eartha Kitt. Truth is a theory that is constantly being disproved. Only lies, it seems, go on forever. So on what occasion do you lie?
When I open my mouth. I think often truth is too complex to bother with. It's easier to have a simpler lie than to go with the truth.
Schopenhauer's, his all truth passes through three stages. First, it's ridiculed, then it's violently opposed, and then third, it's accepted as being self-evident. I knew the wake was great all along.
Yeah.
Okay, that leads us to science and art. So, which is really, an amazing thing because you're really an artist and a scientist. I mean, you went medical, computer nerd, and now you're what an observation I've had and I've been 4 Finnegan's Wake reading clubs. A lot of them attract old dudes who were in physics or engineering, and they want to keep their head so detailed, quantum entanglement,
Mm-hmm.
that they go, wow, I'm going to go into the wake. And so what's the difference between art and science?
I think, well, there are similarities, there are differences, but I think a major difference is that science is basically art tied up. Science is tied up to an external reality, whether it's the world of physics or the world of psychology and sociology. It's all evaluated either in its predictive value, its ability to predict and explain the external world, or in its functional value, its ability to create value through engineering, through medicine, for humans. Art, in that respect, is in some respect may be free from that. In a lot of cases, you don't need to. It doesn't need to adhere to the rules of the universe or of humanity, and it doesn't need to have a function. It can just be for itself. So that's where it's free as opposed to science being tied up.
Yeah, both Warhol and McLuhan says art is anything you can get away with. And my friend said, that sounds like Trump. That is spooky. Here's
Uh-huh.
here's a couple art and science quotes. I would love to get and I know all these quotes are stupid, they're out of context, but you're good. All I'm doing is use them as a prompt for you to say anything. Jean Cocteau, art is science made clear.
He definitely hasn't read Finnegan's Wake. If you think it's made clear. No.
Wow, because I really want to know, did Jean Cocteau know Joyce? Did he read Finnegan's Wake? They must have been about the same time. Or no, they could have.
No.
They're not the
I think he was born in the
late.
1920s, so
He's later.
he's
Yeah.
later, I think.
Yeah. Okay, here's McLuhan. When you push our paradigms back, we get history. When we push them forward, we get science.
Hmm. I'll pass.
Okay, no worries.
Mhm.
Chomsky. We learn more about ourselves from literature than from science.
Oh, no. Well, depends what you want to learn. I mean, if you want to learn if you have coronary heart disease, I wouldn't recommend reading any literature, but I don't know, go do an ECG. I mean, depends
Yeah.
what there's things that you can learn from literature, but there's so much more you can learn from science.
Yeah, because
It's a quotable, but it
right.
doesn't. Yeah.
But here's the flip is this woman who became a successful writer. She says, I was raised in the Bahamas and my mother never read a book. And then she became a writer. And she said, but she knew what to do when a tsunami hit from one of the songs that they sang.
Hmm.
So that's funny. You know, art can teach us these things as science. So here's Arthur Clarke. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Yeah, I've heard that one before. I think. I think. I think it's definitely true. I think in some respects, science nowadays plays the role that in earlier societies magic and religion played. And in some respect, I think, and it's not saying anything against magic, is against science. Science is a modern religion in the respect that it sets its own rules, set of axioms and rules like religion. And once that set of rules is in place, it becomes very dogmatic. Uh, and in that respect, it also resembles past religions. Uh, so I think that's a good insight. I think there's the quote from Einstein that says that when he was first introduced to quantum physics, he said that God doesn't play dice.
Yeah.
So in that respect, quantum physics for Einstein was kind of, he belittled it, but it was the equivalent of magic.
Yeah.
It wasn't the equivalent of science. And so I think that's a good quote.
That's good. We're gonna end with Einstein, so I'm glad you slipped him in to get us ready. But here's what I think, Rafi. I think the point of aphorisms and all these cute quotes is to reinvent them and take them farther. It's like Echo saying, you know, you stand on the shoulder of giants and look farther, or whoever he got it from. You know, it's like, how can we? Yeah, you can say, oh, that's a good observation from Arthur Clarke, but how can you take it back? So here's two rewordings of Arthur Clarke just for your reflection. Warren Ellis said, any sufficiently advanced civilization is indistinguishable from its nature.
What's the nature of the society?
Well, yeah, that's the interesting thing, because you know the word nature in the McLuhan world is heavy, because second nature is, you know, we think nature is trees and the clouds and in the earth, but
yeah,
McLuhan world nature is when the kid pops out of the womb. Now it's already doing TikToks. That nature is, they live in, like me and you live in electricity world. We never lived without electricity. That's really what one of the hidden grounds in Finnegan's Wake is, how did electricity change humans? In my opinion, how did television and all this change us? How did printed matter? How did all our inventions shape us? So, anyways, that's funny just to question that. But here's Bruce Sterling. Any sufficiently advanced any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from its garbage.
That's nice.
You like that one?
Yeah, I think garbage is a great invention of mankind.
It's a great invention of what? What was the
of
word?
mankind.
Of
Invention.
mankind.
It kind of reminds me, between the last interview and this one, I happened to be in Antarctica, and we saw there penguins.
Yeah.
And I came to learn something about penguins that I didn't know before. They live in depend on the type of penguins, but some of them live in big colonies, and they stay more or less in one place, which means that they they defecate
Yeah.
in the same place. So after they lived there for a while, weeks, months, it's no longer white; it's brown
Yeah.
from the. And I later learned that you can see it from space. You can see from space the places where the penguins lived, because that part of Antarctica is no longer white; it's brown or green.
Yeah.
So we're not the only one producing garbage, but we're a lot more evolved
Yeah.
than penguins.
Here's James Joyce comment from Marshall McLuhan's book, Interior Landscape. So, you know, the interior, 1969. James Joyce has solved numerous problems which science has not yet formulated as problems.
Well, I don't subscribe to the Joyce the Prophet school of thought. So uh, I, anything that people tend to attribute to Joyce the Prophet, I attribute to coincidence
Yeah.
and just he was a clever person, but that's about it.
Yeah. Well, my friend says all writers have ESP. Everybody's predicting the future all the time. You know.
Uh, if they're good, if they're lucky, if they're insightful.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned Einstein, and immediately afterwards you had a quote from Einstein. It's not that I'm a prophet. It's
Right. Because here's the next two.
yeah.
Einstein, the most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and science.
It's similar to I think the journey. What you quoted from Buñuel about seeking the truth.
Yeah.
Seeking the truth is what Buñuel and what Einstein were spent their lives on. So
Yeah.
in that respect, it's understandable that that's what they're looking. Obviously, not all humans spend their time seeking the truth, but some do.
But the mysterious is interesting in that context because that's Alan Watts saying everybody's trying to figure out who they are. If you figure out who you are, you're fucked. So it's really like that mystery of, oh, can I ever? You know, you answered my first question brilliantly. What's the best thing for a human being? The answer to that question.
Yeah,
You remember that? That was good.
yeah. Uh-huh.
So here's
Yeah, I
the
do
other.
remember.
Yeah, here's the other Albert Einstein. Yeah, see, Rafi, you can remember your own quotes, but not other people's.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's okay.
Here's the other Albert. Religion without science is blind. Science without religion is lame.
I'd go even more than. I'm not sure religion is the right word, but if we substitute for ethics, it's more than lame. I think it's dangerous.
Dangerous. Yeah.
Yeah, I think science left to the hands of immoral or careless scientists is dangerous.
In fact, I got to go back too because I forgot this. Joyce solved numerous problems which science has not formulated as problems.
Mm-hmm.
So that was okay. So this is Tony Conrad, a great experimental musician, an artist. Artists break rules that haven't even been made yet.
Okay, that's better.
Is that sort of what Joyce did? You think he broke rules that weren't even made yet?
Yes, I think that's a good way. I think that's what makes it appear so uh, unreadable even today, because it took it so far away that most people don't recognize it as literature or as English anymore. So uh, I think I think this was recognized immediately as soon as he started. That's why a lot of people that supported him before Finnegan's Wake kind of left him when he started to do that,
Yeah.
because he was breaking too much.
Yeah. You've gone a little too far and blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
And it's like, yeah, supposedly Virginia Woolf came around and goes, no, he really is a great writer, but I got to diss him. It's that same thing you saying, their PR or whatever those two words, wishful
Yes.
thinking and malicious exaggeration. Yeah, they
Yeah.
all do that.
Uh-huh.
That's him and Wyndham Lewis. They're just helping each other.
Uh-huh. Right. It's
But
it's a useful feud.
a useful feud is really good. Yeah. And so that's I don't like that word. It's too easy to say, oh, Finnegan's Wake is unreadable. No, it's
Mhm.
very readable. When I go to Dublin's Sweeney's Reading Club every Tuesday at 11 a.m., my time in California, it is the best Finnegan's Wake reading club ever, in my opinion, in 30 years of reading the Wake out loud. Because people, first of all, you're in this tiny little tourist trap bookstore. In the down the way, you can see the cars going by, and so you're in the real world. It's not like everybody's in their room and see books in back of them. And then people walk into the bookstore and they're going to buy a bar of lemon soap or, some touristy James Joyce thing. And they go, hey, you want to read a Joyce book? We're on Zoom worldwide. Here, read this. They might not even know what they're getting into reading. And they sit there and go, blah, blah, blah. And they sort of laugh. And a lot of them are really good Joyce readers, but their headspace isn't into all James Joyce Finnegan's Wake reading clubs. People know what they're getting into. So it's so much more wide open, and it's a flowing thing, and you don't tear down and analyze one page for 2 hours. You just read 8 pages over an hour. And that is the best way to read Finnegan's Wake, in my opinion. I like the other ways, and they're very important. And you can teach at Trinity and, buy a car and a house from writing books explaining Finnegan's Wake.
Mhm.
If you're lucky. Too bad you can't even. Do you make any money on Fleet?
No, there was a period when I offered people to donate,
Yeah,
and for a year or two, and people did very generously. But then I realized I don't need it anymore, so I asked them to stop. And no, I don't make any money.
beautiful, Rafi. Here's one more science. Oh, go
There's
ahead.
before that. There's one thing you've mentioned before, that a lot of people aren't aware that about the option of reading Finnegan's Wake in a group and the importance of doing that. And you seem very versed in that. I think something that I've noticed that's missing on the web is some web page that collects all the available reading groups, both
It's there. It's
where
there. It's on the New York Wake.
it's outdated. It
No,
doesn't
no,
contain.
it got updated by
It's not updated.
one of my peers, Peter
Oh, good.
Coogan, forced
I
his
need
way
to.
onto it and said, "Dude, everything's a lot is out of date." He
Uh,
updated it, so now it's
okay.
updated,
I'll
and
look it up again.
they only allow so much. So I can hook you up with Peter, and he'll give you the super uncensored list. It's really
Yeah,
quite.
I'd love to hear that. I
No,
might be able to host it on Fleet to have
yeah, no,
people.
you should I'm gonna put right here.
Yes.
Peter Rafi will host it on Fleet. Yeah, he would love
Mm-hmm.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's
Gladly.
really he did a really concise job. Really good point because it is
Okay.
important. Because most people don't realize. I said this for years. I don't know if it's exact. There's 52 Finnegan's Wake reading clubs across the world, you
Really?
know, and that
Mm-hmm.
was pre-Zoom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Zoom.
now it's like Zoom is the ideal way because we have people in all over the world coming to our wake groups, and it's great. So
Yeah.
here's one more science quote. Paul Vinet, Veyne, French historian or
Okay.
archaeologist. Science finds no truths. It discovers unknown facts that can be interpreted 1,000 ways.
Yeah. That's also quite insightful. I think it's not specific to art, to science. It's specific to all human knowledge, that interpretation plays an important part of it. And I think part of the fluctuation of societies, uh, how different interpretations of the same set of facts is creates divisions within societies or does not. I think we're at the moment living in a period where it's become very divisive because the same set of facts all over the world results in completely opposite interpretations. And
Exactly.
it's true also of science. You can do anything with the there's I think you there's that saying, there's black lies, there's white lies, and there's statistics. Statistics is the best way to lie. So
Yeah.
you can take numbers and do whatever you want. The same is for with science. So in that respect, yes, interpretation plays a big role in science and in anything.
Big role because it's just like, I've interviewed John Gordon, his book, Finnegan's
Mhm.
Wake, a plot summary.
Yeah,
And then I love Sam Sloat's book, how James Joyce wrote
good
Finnegan's
for
Wake.
you.
What a title! Yeah, how'd you
Yeah.
figure that out?
Yeah, yeah, it's a good PR
Yeah,
title.
it's
Yeah,
all about the title. Like you're on novel.
yeah.
So I spoke with filmmaker Michael Apted 40 years ago. I said, why do rock video editors feel so obliged to edit fast? Most people don't know Abel Gance invented rapid montage in 1922 in France, but it flourished in the 80s with MTV to the point where Marty Scorsese said, I cut my films faster because of MTV. So Michael Apted said, because we've learned to take in information faster. Can we literally learn to take in information faster, or are we just brainwashed to believe we can?
I th- I think that there's a difficulty in answering this question. I think there's an attempt to take information faster. It just results in a more fragmented and and it's like speed reading. It's something that's been taught in the US. It's not very common outside the US, but in the US, it had been common for a while. You don't really read faster; you just read less,
Yeah.
basically. So when I don't think we think uh, 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 faster, we just learn to live with uh, a faster flow of in which we just receive a selection. When it's faster, the selection of information is just with wider gaps in it. When it's slower, it's smaller gaps in it. But in any case, I don't think we're thinking faster than people 1,000 years ago.
Yeah, because I was raised in front of a TV. I have great parents, and they want me to read and get good grades in school and all that. But basically, I think TV caused me to not really be able to read good. And so I skim, and then I read books backwards. I sort of read the end and I kind of jump around, and I read books about books. I don't read books, and so I'm a idiot. And so that's why people go, "You run a reading club?" And I goes, "Yeah, it's Finnegan's Wake." That is, that's what Joyce is sort of doing for me, is enabling me to read in the kind of way I think, or I process information, So the hidden question, Rafi, is it literally possible for humans to multitask?
I think some people can multitask. I think it depends on the task, obviously.
Yeah.
I think you can walk and chew gum at the same time. Most people can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Yeah.
It's multitasking. But I find that I think for most people, the ability to single task effectively results in better results at the end of the day. For example, when I work on Fleet, I can easily work. At the moment, it takes me about 2 weeks to work on one page of Finnegan's Wake.
Wow.
And I work about 7-8 hours a day. So we're talking close to 100 hours that I spend on a Finnegan's Wake page. That's slow. That's why it'll take 40 years.
I love it. Do you like it? Is it fun?
Yeah. Sometimes it is. There's. I think when I at some point analyzed it, I kind of occasionally try to compare it to associate it with my Jewish roots. I mean, in Judaism, especially among religious Jews, there's this portion of the population who spend their entire life studying the religious text, the Torah, the Talmud, the Mishnah, and they spend literally hours a day talking and about minutia of easily on a single sentence or a single word, and discussing it for hours. And it's in that respect, it's very similar to what I'm doing in Finnegan's Wake, except that I don't do it religiously. I'm doing it. So when I discover something that is obvious that it's there within Finnegan's Wake, it's something and that's never been discovered before. Yes, there's a lot of fun in that,
and there's fun
and there's a lot, but there's a lot of this.
But two questions from that, Rafi. That was beautiful what you said. Is that, is that a metaphor for life, that the Jewish people that do that, they spend their entire life studying the religious texts? Is that a metaphor for something else? Is that don't we do that with everything? Like humans do, they engage in something And there's the word, the second part of the question is religiously. And you go, I don't do it religiously. What's the other word? Obsessively, destination wise? Like, what's that other word?
Obsessively is a good word,
But
I guess.
obsessively implies negative. I mean,
Yes.
are you substituting the religious test obsession with the wake, and it's in your DNA or the way you were raised? You see what I'm saying? Because obsessive even implies a little negative. Religious implies a little negative. What's the word that we're looking for, the adjective? And is that a metaphor for what humans do with everything?
Uh, hmm, it's wholeheartedly, perhaps.
Wholeheartedly. I love that.
Um, that doesn't carry the.
Negative. Yeah.
I need to clarify about the when I say that they spend their entire life,
Right.
it's literally that they don't work. They literally don't work. So they,
Dude, what do you think Americans do? They work 40 hours a week, and
yeah,
then
but
they go home and watch TV, or they diddle on their
yeah,
cell phone. I mean, what's the difference?
the question is, are they doing it of choice? How many Americans would stop working if they didn't have to, or will continue working if they didn't
No,
have
I
to?
think, well, that's that's really what you're asking is the question I usually don't ask. Where'd you get your work ethic from?
Uh, I think, yeah, part of it came from home. Both my parents were hard workers. Uh, Part of it, but most of it came from the same all-heartedness that I'm investing in Finnegan's Wake now. I invested in work in a very similar manner, perhaps, but in that in work I didn't necessarily have a choice of what always have a choice of what to do. Here I chose Finnegan's Wake.
No, you had the choice. You had the choice to go into being a medical guy for 4.5 years. And then
Yeah.
you go, I'm out of here. And then you slipped into computers and you said to me, you got really successful. And you go, okay, I'm out of here. And you have a great partner who says, dude, go ahead, write your book. And then you slipped into the wake. Now, if you're going to do the next 40 years, do you foresee you slipping out of the wake and go, okay, I've done enough wheat, I'm going to pass it on?
Definitely. I did that before.
Oh, you think you could slip out of doing wheat?
Yeah, I did from 2010 to 2005 to 2014. I worked a lot on Finnegan's Wake while working at the day job. But and then from 2015 to 2019, I didn't do anything. I completely and I wasn't sure I'd return. But in 2020, I suddenly decided it's time to return.
Yeah.
2021, something like that. Perhaps
So
COVID.
you're not predicting you're destined to do 40 more years of wheat. You're saying
No.
if I do it, it would take me 40 more years. But at this point, you're happy doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're all grateful for that. That's the amazing thing. But it isn't. So I wanted to finish the work ethic thing. Most 80 to 90% of people, even 99% of people, where'd you get your work ethic? My parents. That's how you're raised. If you go to Wikipedia and work ethic, about the third paragraph down, it says, this could be a scam from consumer culture. Like
Yeah.
whoever does, I mean, that's why we sort of discount The other thing I hate about Joyce studies is they go, he was a drunk and he was syphilis and he was just a human being. And
Yeah,
he had his strengths and he had his weaknesses. But it's hard for us to separate the art from the artist.
yeah.
And then go ahead. Yeah.
There's this thing, it just reminded me that anything not worth doing is
Yeah.
worth doing well.
Yeah.
So I feel, I think it's an internal, in my case, it's an internal conflict. I feel conflicted with myself if I'm not
Yeah.
doing my best, regardless of what. It's an internal conflict.
But that's what I'm trying to get to. That is that hardwired in all humans? What humans
No.
are? No.
No.
I think all humans want to do something, whether it's take a nap or go to work. They're all driven. They're all driven, but then
it depends what something is. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. We make a value judgment. Like, some cultures say take a nap in the middle of the day. Americans are like, no, you got to work for 8 hours and then go home. And that's you want productivity in your staff. That's what the computer nerds did. They go, we're going to give you ping pong, yoga. My friend works at Google, sushi bar, basketball hoops. You get showers, you give them, you're going to be more productive.
Yeah.
So
where I work, they had another idea. It's called unlimited vacation.
Yeah.
Unlimited vacation. You can take vacation as much as you want. You don't. It ended up that most people took less than they did when it was limited.
You mean at your computer job?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I worked in my computer job.
Yeah. Well, anyways, Rafi, we did another 90 minutes. I hope you'll do a part 3 because I got a lot more questions, and we really got to get deeper into Joyce. I want to know things like, did humans invent language, or is it hardwired in us? The Chomsky thing. Is it invented? Is it in us hardwired, or did we? Well, of course we invented the symbols. But, and then how does that get integrated into the wake? I would love for you to, you should consider doing a session at the New York Wake Group. They would love it. Some of them freaked out when they saw Gerry interviewed the Fleet guy, because all they do is go, well, Fleet says this and John Gordon says this, and you're like the main, well, Fleet says this. You've rendered Roland McHugh obsolete.
Yeah, it is a bit unfortunate, I'm afraid. I've become very careful about what I allow in, because I know that people kind of regard it as authoritative. It's not. It's just what I think.
Right, but to break that code, that the first, how many years? Okay, it's 20 years old, right?
Wait, yeah. Soon to be 20 years. Yeah.
I know you already said this in part 1, but the first 10 years was all Roland McHugh?
No. When I started when I opened it in 2004, it was Roland McHugh and quite a bit more.
But wait, it was all of Roland McHugh.
First and second edition, because
that's it. First and second edition.
Yes, all of McHugh.
The third and fourth are not in Fleet, and then you did selective yanking out stuff.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So, but that's quite amazing, because for years I'd go, well, why would we do Roland when we got Fleet? And then I would ask all the pros, well, is everything from Roland and Fleet? And they go, I think so. Well, nobody knew. So you really told us.
It's written in the bibliography, but
right. But but
Yeah.
that's like the small print.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the small print, the big print giveth, and the small print taketh away.
Yeah.
But here's the point. One of the guys in the New York Wake who I love, Stanley Applebaum, he's been reading the Wake for he was in New York group. The first Finnegan's Wake reading. Here's the really heavy thing about Joyce and the Wake reading groups, in my opinion. He invented Finnegan's Wake reading clubs 10 years before the Wake came out. Joyce invented it in 1929. Yeah. Then in 1939, the book comes out. Then in 47, T.S. Eliot and other people in New York start Finnegan's Wake reading clubs. Okay. And then Stanley gets in the Wake groups, I don't know what year, but let's just say 60s. He's been reading the Wake really long. Almost every Wake meeting, he goes, this is all about sound. It's about jazz. And I mean, it's his mantra. He says other things, and he's a brilliant guy. And he's like in his 90s, and he's really, he's a down-to-earth guy. He's not like, he doesn't come off as being academic, but he's very smart. But I love how his mantra is, it's about the sound. Because it is how you pronounce the words is so important. And the key is that when you're looking at the words and other people are reading it aloud, you're more aware of each syllable because your head is going, I wouldn't have pronounced it that way. Or you're like, every kind of way to pronounce. There's a guy in Dublin who's Irish, and he knows how to read it like it's just normal talking. And it's like brilliant. But I love when people, they stumble over the words.
Yeah.
They go, I don't know what he's saying there. When people add little things like, oh, I don't get this. That's what Joyce is really. I think he's in heaven going, that's where I wanted it. I wanted you to add your own. I had a Wake reading group on the other part of LA once at a bookstore, and everybody read 2 lines. And this one woman, she read 2 lines, and then she started making up words. And do you know Joseph Beuys?
No.
Beuyss. Look him up. He's a very important agitprop performance artist from Austria. He wrote a whole new chapter to Finnegan's Wake.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I mean, like, how appropriate, Yeah. So, anyways, why don't we plan a part 3 down the road? It doesn't matter, 3, 4, 5 months, whatever works for you.
Okay.
And I really appreciate it, Rafi. You've done something that's impossible. You made the impossible possible.
Yeah. And I'll continue doing it for 40 years.
Yay! I got you committed. It's on tape now.
I need to be committed.
You need no. McLuhan has the best line about that. You can't prove you're sane unless you have discharge papers from a mental hospital.
Yeah.
So my friend said, see, I'm sane. I framed my discharge papers. They're on my wall. See, I can prove I'm sane.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Rafi. I hope this never ends. We keep talking forever and ever. We'll be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.